You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. And Nick, we just got to see the first round of the 2019 draft, and I have to say I'm a little shocked. There's times I was laughing, times I was crying. It moved me, Bob.
Yeah, no, man, it's a lot of fun, and the NFL draft it's some of the best live entertainment television out there. It's theater. Nobody knows what's going to happen. You have all these mocks, you have your preparation, but once the team is on the clock, once it's going, nobody knows what's going to happen. So yeah, a lot of fun, and man, the Broncos made some moves.
Yeah, they were the first trade of the draft, and we'll get into that here a little bit more. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that you can find us on Twitter, as we'll be tweeting throughout this entire draft process. And you're going to want to know where you can find our shows, our articles, all those kind of things. So you can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and you can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. You can also follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. You can also make sure you head over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. All right, Nick, well, let's get into this. We'll get into the pick first. And we've been talking on this show quite a bit about how there's a very good chance the Broncos could be trading back, that if their guy is not there, and from what we understand, Devin Bush was really high on their board. He got taken. I guess he wasn't taken. I guess they traded back. So maybe he wasn't as high on their board as we thought. But they ended up with Noah Fant, Iowa tight end, one of your boys. Who knows him better than you? So, that's great to have you be one of the analysts here on this show. And, you've seen this guy live. You've seen everything possible with him. So let's just start off. What do you think of this?
Yeah, well, first, I guess we'll talk about Noah Fant first. Live reaction here today, not recording this. The first round just ended. The Patriots just took in N'Keal Harry. But yeah, no, the Broncos took Noah Fant, first round tight end from the University of Iowa. I think it's the first time, I tweeted at some point, but one of the first times in a while that you've seen two tight ends go in the top 20 in a long time. And first time ever you see two tight ends from the same college, the same team, go in the first round of the same year. So, kudos to the University of Iowa developing those boys. But, man, I heard Rich Scangarello was ecstatic to get this guy. Noah Fant, you weren't on the episode when Derek Klassen came on, correct?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right.
He talked about this Shanahan offense, it's Scangarello offense, but the Shanahan offense, about being a team that, they could do a really good job of uncovering the tight ends, giving them open looks, and then also utilizing speed up the seam to, kind of put, especially in zone coverage, but put that linebacker and that safety in a bind. Well, you get a 2-for-1 in this instance. Noah Fant, his ability, his speed vertically is unmatched in this class. You're talking about a guy who, he's essentially a wide receiver. Let's be completely honest. Great size, 6'4" and an eighth, 250 pounds, but he ran a 4.5 flat, 96th percentile, jumped out of the gym. Honestly, I heard that he was a little bit upset with his jumps at the combine, 39.5 vertical, 127 broad. He thought he'd be jumping 41, 129, which would have been close to records. That's what he jumped at the Iowa, spring ball last season, not the pro day, so to speak, but last year. So yeah, just a dynamic athlete. And man, the Broncos offense, we've been talking about wanting to make this offense much better, about, doing better with the passing offense being more explosive. And they got one of the most explosive players in the entire draft. So you got to be excited about it, right? Like, there's no way to be upset about it. And trading back, I guess if you don't really want tight end round one, that's something that leaves me pause. Taking one, especially at 10 overall, I'd have been a little bit skeptical. But the fact that they were able to trade back and get a player like this that's going to help the offense, so much. I mean, you're talking about the offense, Scangarello using him a lot, Joe Flacco loving the tight end. It just makes a lot of sense in that regard. And they got a 2023 and a pick 51 overall tomorrow. So, really hard to be upset about it. And coming from that Iowa system, he's going to be ahead of the curve as far as tight ends go. Normally tight ends come in from the NFL draft. They aren't ready for the NFL. Iowa's running a pro-style system. They ask a lot of their tight ends, both from blocking and route running, 2.5 years of production. I think he's got a chance to be one of the more productive rookie tight ends we've seen in a long time.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at last year, Scangarello with George Kittle. And he didn't have a great quarterback production. Let's just be honest here. I mean, they did better than what some people thought, but even beyond that, this is a guy who had 88 receptions, 1,377 yards. So he loves the tight end. He loves athletic tight ends. He's got himself now an Iowa tight end, just like George Kittle. So he knows what he's getting in that kind of makeup of what they did in college. And then you look at Joe Flacco and his love of tight ends. I mean, you look at what the Ravens did last year and getting Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews, one of my favorite tight ends last year. And he loved especially Mark Andrews. And this guy's a lot better tight end than Mark Andrews. I mean, I loved Mark Andrews last year. Noah Fant is so much more. I mean, you're talking about a bigger, faster, stronger, everything you want in a tight end. And a red zone threat. The Broncos were one of the worst red zone teams in the NFL last year. You're looking at a team now that has some very great options over the middle of the field. I mean, Noah Fant, you got Hamilton at the wide receiver position there in the slot. And so it just kind of opens up everything. And plus now defenses absolutely have to respect the deep ball. Him running up the seam, you can't crowd the line of scrimmage. That play action off the run, I mean, that's going to be a great play there to Noah Fant. That wasn't a throw that Keenum could make last year, but Flacco, he can make that throw.
Gosh, I just had a little bit of PTSD about Keenum trying to throw up the seam.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know, but it's true. God. But again, I mean, this pick last year doesn't make any sense. This pick this year makes a lot of sense for the Broncos and what they want to do with this new offense and where they want to target players. And again, you're just adding an explosive weapon to an offense that just hasn't had all that many explosive weapons. I mean, you got Phillip Lindsay, who's obviously explosive, but you need more than that. And Cortland Sutton, he's a good receiver, but he's not your deep threat big time. I mean, he's going to win some jump balls for you, but he's not going to take the top off a defense or anything like that. Sanders coming off an Achilles injury. He's not taking the top off anybody. Hamilton's more of the work the middle of the field. And so getting a guy that can really run up the seam, again, challenge those safeties and keep them honest to having to stay back, it just makes everything so much better. Now, what would you say, just looking at the negative of this pick? What are you thinking with Noah Fant? Like, I mean, again, tight end taken in the first round. We've talked about that of not being great value. And so is this a little bit of a letdown because of that, or because of the trade back? Are you thinking, hey, this is playing with some house money, so going and getting a player like this that really could turn into a top 5 receiving tight end in the NFL? I mean, where are you falling in that category?
Well, you're picking at 20 overall, so he's not going to be a total package tight end. There's a reason that Hawkinson went 8 overall compared to Noah Fant falling to 20, which honestly makes me pretty excited about Fant because I think they're pretty competitive with each other, and Fant's going to have a little bit of a fire burning under his butt because he was always, considered the guy at Iowa coming into last year. Hawkinson kind of took that from him, but I think this is going to be a fun little back and forth that we see going forward with these two. As far as the positional value, I probably would have preferred going tight end day 2, maybe early day 3 in a vacuum. But with a trade down, I mean, you're getting pick 51 overall, round 3 in 2020. I feel like that means you're playing with house money. We've said that on here before, but you're playing with house money at that point. And adding somebody like this that can, again, push the seam, offer just a speed threat. I mean, right now I have the mock draftable pulled up of Noah Fant and Cortland Sutton. And Noah Fant is, not only does he have 30 pounds on Cortland Sutton, but he is He ran a better 40-yard dash than the Broncos' number one wide receiver going into next year. 0.04 seconds faster, but still, that's incredible. Had a better vertical jump by 4 inches. Had a better broad jump by 3 inches. And Sutton had a really, really good 3-cone. But still, like, absolutely crazy to have this type of athlete play in this position. He's almost a wide receiver, but he's that kind of flex tight end. I compare him, Eric Ebron, Jared Cook, that kind of guy. So yeah, it's going to be a big get for this offense, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I am too. I really am. Trading back to 20, like I said, it opened up a whole wide range of players. I've said from the very beginning that from about pick 7 or 8 in this draft to about pick 35, 40, there's not a ton of difference. I mean, it's more just preference and what are your needs. And for the Broncos, I mean, tight end's been a huge need. I know they just signed back Hireman. There's still some out there who have a lot of hope for Jake Butt returning and becoming something. Fumagalli, we haven't really seen what the 9-figured man can do, but none of them come even close to comparing to what Fant brings to the table. I mean, like I said, he's a athletic freak at the tight end position. You think about linebackers trying to cover this guy, good luck. I mean, there's a couple linebackers that can kind of keep up with him, but most of them are still 4 or 5 inches shorter than him and not as heavy. And then you think about safeties trying to keep up with this guy. Even most of them are not athletic enough to keep up with him. They're not as big as him. They're not as strong as him. I mean, it presents that matchup nightmare that the Broncos have absolutely needed. Again, I think for the Chiefs, they've had Travis Kelce. I hate to bring up that he is a good player, but he is. And he's that matchup nightmare. Last year, he had 103 catches, 1,336 yards. You think of like Zach Ertz. He's another receiving tight end, 116 catches, 1,163 yards, 8 touchdowns. And so when you get that kind of player, you talked about Jared Cook. He finished 5th. If you're a fantasy football person, he was the 5th best tight end last year. Had 896 yards, 6 touchdowns. And so when you can get a player like that, again, it just opens up so much for your offense. And if Fant can work on his blocking a little bit, but even there, I'm not sure how much. I mean, Hireman's a pretty good blocker already. And so you can have him. I think you can have a lot of 2 tight end sets. I know they didn't run that as much in San Francisco last year, but because Fant is such a receiving option, he's kind of like that extra receiver. I mean, you still got a lot of options what you can do. Put him in that slot spot and allow him just attack the middle of the field. And he's not just a seam threat. He's a guy that really runs a lot of the route tree. And so that's something that really sticks out to me as a guy that you can get him on some crossers, you can get him on some comebacks. And again, he can still attack the seam. He's a guy that can really work the back of the end zone, go up there, make the tough catch, come down with the football. It really does. It sets up well for the Broncos and what Flacco loves to do, what Scangarello loves to do, and what Fant really needs to do in the NFL.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I got a little bit of information I want to get to, but first we got to take a quick break.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, and we're back to talk Noah Fant, who is selected 20th overall by the Denver Broncos, who traded down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, talking about him, something that I'm just really excited about him. I've been on the Locked On Iowa Hawkeye podcast a few times, and going into this process before the combine and everything, I had them neck and neck. But Fant, for me, the reason that he really stood out to me, he's not the blocker that Hawkinson is, although I think because you have him on the same tape as Hawkinson, he looks worse than he is, if that makes sense. Like, Hawkinson's just killing guys. He's an amazing blocker, but I think Fant is average. I think he's as good of a blocker, if not a little bit better, than what Troy Fumagalli and Jake Butt are right now. Like, seriously, he was asked to block like that at Iowa. I mean, there's a couple plays of him pancaking guys against Nebraska, but the thing that makes him really unique for me is his red zone proficiency. And I pulled up a little passage here by Scott Docterman, who works for The Athletic, covering the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm just going to read this all because this really, stands out to me. He actually wrote about how much he'd love Fant going to the Denver Broncos. So here we go. Fant immediately would upgrade the entire passing attack for new quarterback Joe Flacco, who regularly looks for tight ends when he led the Baltimore Ravens. Fant is an explosive athlete and a mismatch for almost any defender, and he's also the nation's best red zone threat the last 2 seasons. According to Sports Info Solutions, Fant was targeted in the red zone 21 times over that span. Fant caught 15 passes with 12 touchdowns. 15 passes for 12 touchdowns, with the 4th most touchdowns among FBS players. That's for a tight end. Of the 61 players with at least 20 red zone targets spanning that same time frame, Fant's 57.1% touchdown rate was the best in the entire college football landscape. There's production. That's the production the Denver Broncos desperately need. Denver was tied for an NFL worst 4 red zone interceptions last year, and the Broncos ranked 29th in red zone completion percentage and 31st in third down passes, turning into first downs. Stuff that we kind of blamed on Keenum, but I mean, the weapons could have definitely helped as well, especially when the tight ends fell apart last season. And man, third down passing offense and the red zone just got a massive boost. And, we talked about it with Keenum. Those are the moneymakers in the passing game in the NFL. So if the Broncos could move the ball better through the air on third down and score 7 instead of 3 in the red zone, I mean, that's a home run. That makes the offense tick. That helps the defense. That makes the team so much better.
Well, you think about the difference between NFL teams, and really a lot of games come down to a touchdown difference. And so having a guy, like you said, that can turn a 3 into 7, or as the Broncos did a lot this last year, obviously the throwing those red zone interceptions, Keenum, it makes such a huge difference. Again, turning a 0 into 7. I mean, that's huge. And I mean, even adding 4 points a game, let's just say that takes the Broncos scoring offense from 24th this last year clear up to about 12th in the NFL. That's a pretty impressive jump, really.
Yeah.
And you think about, we got Fangio for the defense that I think he can really get them going pretty well. I still think they're going to add a couple pieces here in the draft, obviously. But again, you improve the offense just a little bit, 4 points. And that takes us right there to the 12th, 13th mark for the Broncos. And you add a little bit more because of Flacco, say, maybe a point or 2 because of Flacco. We're talking top 10 scoring offense. I'm not trying to say the Broncos are going to be that next year, but you're talking about just those death by inches. The Broncos killed themselves by foots last year. They were really killing themselves. And so getting just that little bit more production, man, it can make the Broncos become a borderline playoff kind of team. We haven't even talked about it, but does this Fant pick really kind of signify that the Broncos are all in on that they think that they're a great playoff kind of team this next year?
The offense is definitely going to be better. There's no other way to put it. Outside of the interior offensive line, tight end was probably the most questionable position coming into this year. And they got probably not the best blocking tight end, not the best tight end in this class, but the best receiving weapon at the position in this class. And there are some questions, we're panning them up right now because we're excited about the pick, obviously. But I got some more information here. Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus talks about him here in a tweet from March 26th, and he says, Noah Fant, fantastic speed that challenges the secondary at all levels. However, he does have a few notable numbers here from Pro Football Focus. 21 explosive plays for 15-plus yards. And let me tell you, as much as I stand for the University of Iowa and I like Nathan Stanley left a bunch of passes deep to Noah Fant last year. And Noah Fant had 2 or 3 steps on defenders multiple times open, and Nate Stanley would either throw it short or throw it too deep. So if Flacco can connect on some of those deep balls with Fant, they're going to be there. He can get off press if you play him outside, and you can isolate him kind of like what the Patriots do with Gronkowski, where he's like that lone wide receiver. If you do that with Fant, and Iowa did that a few times as well, look out, man. He is dynamic there. 21 explosive plays at 15-plus yards. Crazy. However, he only forced 3 missed tackles on 78 career catches. Not the most dynamic, or that's not the correct word, not the most nuanced in the open field. He will outrun you, but he's not going to make you miss, so to speak. He's not going to stiff arm you. He's not going to make that guy miss with a move or anything like that. That's not his game, but he can outrun you. And if he's open, he can run right past you. 14 drops on 92 catchable targets. However, I do also want to point out that, again, Nate Stanley, solid quarterback, could be, I mean, if he takes a step next year, could be a first rounder next year for all we know. But he did not feed Fant many contested targets last year. A lot of wide open looks in that regard. He trusted Hawkinson more with those tougher catches. So that's worth noting. And again, talking about that, here's the other stat. Only 4 contested catches. Fant does show good catch radius. I mean, he did a really good job this past year. Again, Stanley kind of erratic with his ball placement. Not the worst accuracy. Placement and accuracy are two different things. But Stanley would not always put the ball in the best spot. And Fant would have to adjust whether the ball is behind him, low, high, and he still was able to make plays after the catch just because of the speed, because he did show soft hands and a good catch radius. So it's more of a question of the toughness in regards to the contested catch. Is he going up there and fighting for it? But if you can get him open, uncover him, so to speak, which the West Coast offense that Shanahan and Scangarello hopefully is going to bring to Denver has done, there's a lot of potential there. But, there's a reason he fell to 20.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's one of those players you have to have an offense built to take advantage of his skill set. I mean, I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, of Hawkinson's the better overall tight end in the sense of he can block, he can receive, he can do a little bit of everything. He can be your inline, he can play a little bit of slot if you need him to, he can play that H-back, all those kind of things that you really want from a tight end. But as a specialty player, Fant, if you have an offense that's designed to take advantage of his kind of skill set, he can become the more known player of the two. Just because, again, he can become that explosive tight end that you're talking, that 80 catches, 1,000-yard kind of seasons, 10 touchdowns, and just becoming one of the bigger mismatches in all of football. And, I mean, that's, again, but you have to have the right offensive system to do that, and I think that's exactly what the Broncos have. I hate to always go back to George Kittle, but I mean, that's kind of the system that we're going to be looking at. And I mean, they took more advantage of him than any other team probably could. And so, yeah, they had to, because they didn't have any other weapons hardly. But again, I mean, it just shows that they love to get the tight ends. They know how to scheme them open. They know how to run the offense even through the tight end itself. And so Noah Fant, I think he can have that early impact. He could become, I mean, I'm not trying to project or anything like that, but I mean, if he can stay healthy, if he can really get involved in the offense, I mean, we're talking a guy that could really show well. I mean, there's not a whole lot of positional players that are great in this draft. I mean, there was
one running back and one tight end, or one wide receiver.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, those are kind of the positions that you look at for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Well, Noah Fant might be the most explosive player that could really do a lot for the Broncos. Like I said, I'm not saying he's a 1,000-yard kind of guy, but you're looking at maybe an 800-yard, 10-touchdown kind of season. I think he could do that.
And I can't stress enough, normally tight ends take 2-3 years before you really start to see them make an impact. I mean, we got first-round picks, David Njoku and Evan Ingram, and we're still waiting on them. O.J. Howard kind of flashed this past year, but that's 2 years into their career, and Howard got injured, so he was starting to flash. But I think coming from Iowa, you can expect to see Fant and Hawkinson make an impact year one, because they were asked to run so many complex routes. It's not just bubble screens. It's not just, hooks. They're running in a multitude of routes, crossers, and Brian Ferentz did a good job uncovering him, creating some options for him. But you got to be excited, because I think for being a tight end, he's got a chance to make a real year one impact. So yeah, I am very much excited about that. And gosh, I can't believe that he tested better than Cortland Sutton as an athlete. I knew Cortland didn't run great. Cortland had a crazy 3-cone. That's what stands out. But man, what an athlete. I'm really excited about that. And again, I do expect with Fant coming in here to be more, I do think we'll have more 2 tight end sets, because you don't want him being that 2-way tight end, so to speak. With Kittle, he's so good in line and being that strong side blocker, lead blocker, where Iowa didn't really use Fant that way. And if you're using Fant that way, I think you're misusing him. But if you're running him in different ways where you can kind of isolate him, a lot of pre-snap movement to isolate him against either a safety or a linebacker in space, and then if you see the matchup you like with Flacco, especially a veteran quarterback who loves the tight end, you go to that. So it's really fun. I mean, I might have to get Madden next year just to use Fant in space, because with
Mahomes on the cover.
I'll print off a Von Miller cover. I did that before, honestly. They had like a Brady one, and I'm like, I can't look at this. But no, man, I think that his ability to be a mismatch weapon in the pass game is there. I mean, there's obviously The blocking's not elite. That's okay. You got to live with that being that type of athlete. And if you're using him in line as a blocker all the time, I don't think you're using him to his potential, because he makes his money in space. He makes his money as a receiver. So it's a lot of fun, and it should just help the offense a heck of a lot. I don't love the value of tight end round 1, but the Broncos added a pass weapon. The pass offense has been absolutely trash. I mean, even 2015 with Peyton Manning, I know that's sacrilegious to hear, but not great. And now you have some young, fun weapons and somebody in the middle of the defense or in the middle of the offense that teams have to account for. I mean, as Hawkinson, again, bringing it back, Iowa fan, watch every game, season ticket holder, etc. Hawkinson had a great season. He was the number one weapon, I think, for this team. But watching the tape, he wasn't the guy that defensive coordinators were accounting for on every play. There was first read Fant. He's double teamed. He's bracketed because Iowa did not have real great weapons on the outside. There's some young guys, but not great weapons that you need to account for. Fant was the guy that defensive coordinators were like, if we're going to lose, it cannot be to this guy beating us over the top, because he is that kind of weapon. So, man, it's really exciting. I'm trying not to be, I'm lower. I try to be lower on, my college team players. I didn't even have Amani Hooker in my top 50, although a lot of people do, etc. But he makes the offense more explosive. Flacco loves him. Scangarello's loved the tight end. And this is very much a win now move. So I don't know. I don't got much else to say. Taking him at 10, even taking Hawkinson at 10, I would have been disappointed with that. You saw my tweets out there. I was like, if Ed Oliver, if Devin White, if Quinnen Williams are not there at 10, the Broncos' best option is to trade back. And they did. So really, it's good for me. I'm excited about it. I don't know if you're excited as I am. I'm bringing energy. It's 11:30 at night. We got to work tomorrow. Got to kind of clean this podcast too. But it's a great pick. You have any final thoughts before we kind of look ahead to day 2?
I mean, I think you've said it all. I mean, who knows the Iowa tight ends better than you? So I've enjoyed just kind of listening to what you have to say about the guy, and you getting excited should make every Bronco fan excited. I mean, it's not just that you're a homer on these kind of things, because again, like I said, you weren't wanting TJ Hawkinson at 10, you weren't wanting Noah Fant at 10, but this kind of trade back and adding a weapon like this, plus adding that draft capital that they're going to have for tomorrow and for 2020. I mean, those are some nice things, nice pieces to be able to add too. I mean, the Broncos they had eight picks going into today, and they have more than 8 holes. I mean, they would need every single pick to absolutely hit to really fill out the roster and stay healthy, all those kind of things. And so adding, again, that second round, where I think the value of this draft really is in that second, third round area. And I mean, this is a pretty deep draft, or at least I'd say up to about the 4th round, where you can get some starter quality kind of players, especially, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the second round and stuff like that, but that's a very nice thing to add for tomorrow. It gives them a lot of ways that they can go. And again, just adding a piece that they didn't have on this team, boom, I'll take it. Love it for the Broncos. I'm a little shocked, I'll be honest.
Yeah. I thought cornerback or offensive line, but they needed tight end. They needed weapons. They needed help third down pass game. They needed help the red zone offense. I figured maybe they'd want to have a more complete tight end as far as blocking and inline ability with 11 personnel. But I mean, I read those stats a few weeks ago. Maybe I can find that later on, maybe another podcast. But the NFL is starting to kind of adapt again, and that 2 tight end set has actually been a better passing set than 11 personnel. So having a guy like that's just dynamic weapon, you can pair with a more inline guy when you want to go for that kind of thing. It's nothing but excitement. All right, we're going to take one more break, but we'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we're back. And 2 more things I want to touch on here, Carl, before we do get out of here. That trade back, what did you think of the value?
I mean, if you're looking at the trade draft value chart, the Broncos won the trade. I know a lot of people are kind of freaking out of, they should have got a little bit more, should have got a first round pick in 2020 kind of thing. I mean, usually teams, unless they're trading up for a quarterback, that's usually not the case. And so for me, I thought they got pretty good value. I was hoping for a little bit more, maybe that second round pick in 2020. But I mean, again, you got extra ammo for tomorrow, things you can do. But you also have something that you've added for 2020 to add to the team. To maybe trade up if you're looking for a quarterback. Just all around, I think it's pretty fair trade for both teams.
Yeah, I would have loved to have gotten 2020 first if possible, just because, talking to people know more about the organization than I do. Elway's got googly eyes for a quarterback next year. His name, I maybe won't say his name, but he plays for the Oregon Ducks. Maybe I'll give it away there. But I would have loved to have gotten a first-round pick from the Steelers, even not getting that second-round pick this year, if we could have gotten that first-rounder. But getting 51 overall, which is a solid middle of the second-round pick, essentially a top 50 pick, which, that there's a lot of value to have there this year. That's another starter in this class. Unfortunately, I think that's the exact pick that DeMarcus Walker was taken in. Knock on wood there.
Oh, boy.
But they won't make that mistake again. Knock on wood. So getting that and then a third-round pick next year, it's going to obviously, let's say they finish 500 next year and they want to go up and get Justin Herbert. It's going to take more than that third to go up and get it, but it does give you more resources to do that next year if you so happen to be in that situation. So I don't mind it at all. Like I said, I had those three guys I wanted, if not quarterback there. They traded back and they got some draft capital. So, I would have preferred a first next year or maybe a second this year and a second next year. But overall, not a bad trade. And especially when you're talking about trading back for a non-quarterback, that's when you see those huge inflations go up. It was a non-quarterback up trade for the Steelers. So, yeah, no, I don't mind it. Broncos still obviously have holes. Tight end is not going to take this team over the top, but it's another weapon. This team needs weapons. They have a bunch of good young weapons, but they didn't really have anything like this at tight end. Probably their most exciting tight end since Julius Thomas. Obviously their most exciting tight end since Julius Thomas, but I think more upside. So, yeah, really exciting there. But now moving on, we're getting obviously a little long. We're supposed to have it 25 minutes, and let me see what we're at here for you, Carl. Hey, we're at 31, so we're not doing too bad. But
that's our usual. Yeah,
no, whatever. Not doing too bad. But players tomorrow. Anybody shocked on the board? Broncos are going to have the 41st pick. They pick 10 picks later, so 8 picks into the draft. Who are you looking for tomorrow, and who are some shocks that are still on the board for you?
Well, the first shock has to be Drew Lock.
I don't even know, man. I am so. In what world does Daniel Jones go 6 and Drew Lock falls out of the first round?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. I'm still blown away by it, but it is what it is. That would be the one player that really, really shocked me of not going in the first round. The rest of them, there's players that win in the first round that shocked me, but of players that actually fell out of the first round, not really. I guess can we have that conversation just real quick?
Yeah.
What does this mean? If he's there at say 41, do the Broncos continue just to pass on him and just say, "Hey, we're sold out for 2020"?
I honestly, anything that I'd say would be purely speculation. I have no idea. I wouldn't be shocked if they packaged, their second at pick 41 and their third round pick to go up and get him with pick 33. Although that being said, if you want to get him, why don't you just trade up to 31 to begin with and get that 5th year option? So I don't know. A lot of talk was, hey, this is a guy they like. I guess not enough. Maybe they were trying to move up to 31 and 32 and the teams, they got better deals or the Patriots wanted to take N'Keal Harry, who's interesting for them. We don't have time to break down every pick, but it's mind blowing to me. I still am a fan of his play. And if he's there at 41, I probably take him, but there's other guys on the board too that I like as well. And they got picks to play with now. So we will see here. But the other storyline here about guys falling that absolutely shocked me, just how this offensive line class kind of fell there. You had Andre Dillard being traded up by the Eagles, 21 overall, right before the Houston Texans, which, my gosh, I bet you somebody had an absolute aneurysm about that. They were prepared to take him, panicked, and then take Titus Howard. Very confusing pick there for me.
Goodness, yeah.
I like Titus Howard's upside, but very confusing pick there for me.
Right.
And then you got Caleb McGarry going to the Falcons, I'd say reaching, honestly. 14 overall and taking Chris Lindstrom. I mean, I get that guards are more valuable in today's game than interior pass rushers, but 14 overall, I don't know about that. And then you got them going for Caleb McGarry. I mean, 2 good fits for the zone scheme. I get it. But, like, you got Cody Ford on the board. You got Jawan Taylor on the board. You got Dalton Reisner on the board. I don't know, man.
Right.
I don't understand. I don't fully understand the offensive line evaluations here.
Right. Well, it does sound like Jawan Taylor has a knee issue.
Okay.
So that is part of why he is falling. Kind of reminds me of TJ Clemmings. Remember him?
Oh, yeah. Fell to the 4th round?
Yeah, 4th round for
away.
Minnesota. And a lot of people worried about his knee. And so it sounds like Jawan Taylor's having some questions about that have shown up that were kept secret until about the last 24 hours. But again, I mean, a lot of those guys, I would have taken Cody Ford over McGarry for sure. I would have taken, of course, Dalton Reisner as well. I mean, those 2 guys, again, they bring a lot of versatility. I think they have a lot higher upside. And so those would have definitely been my picks over a McGarry, over a Titus Howard. I mean, I know Titus Howard has a little bit more of that left tackle ability. But even there's some other guys that I would be a little bit higher on looking for that left tackle position. I just, that one really shocked me for sure. And I mean, there was a few, Clelin Ferrell going 4th. Did you see that Raiders fan's face on ESPN?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The Giants fan face when Daniel Jones was taken.
Yeah. Daniel Jones going that high. I mean, I was laughing because I knew the Raiders. I was watching with a couple guys, and we were all laughing that we knew that they were going to take Josh Jacobs. And I mean, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but we've talked about that of running back is how valuable is it? How much of a difference was Saquon Barkley compared to Phillip Lindsay this last year? I mean, there's a difference. I do think Saquon Barkley was the better player.
You'd have to be a homer to say any otherwise.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, is it such a big difference that you would be willing to use the number 2 overall pick instead of getting a guy like Sam Darnold compared to, if you get Sam Darnold and Phillip Lindsay compared to Saquon and some undrafted quarterback? I mean, obviously there's no comparison there. And so, I mean, there's always talk about that, but no, I mean, there's definitely some guys on the board that I'm excited about that the Broncos have, especially those 2 second-round picks. I mean, again, we're talking about some offensive line options, Cody Ford. I know that they love Reisner as well. I'm looking at Byron Murphy. I mean, very good cornerback that obviously I think would fit well with the Broncos. You have some safety options, Nasir Adderley. I mean, he's still there. A lot of people had him going 1st round. You got Eric McCoy. I mean, and like I said, Drew Lock's still there. Still a little shocked by that one. And Rocky Ya-Sin, there was some talk that he would make 1st round. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I mean, we've talked about him quite a bit as well on this show of his versatility. So there's just a lot of really good names. That's why I love this 2nd and 3rd round. I mean, I know the Broncos haven't done well with it in the past, but they got some options here where they could get some high-quality starters to come in day 1 and really be impact players for them. Anybody else stick out for you?
There's 3 cornerbacks here on the board that, make sense. And with Chris Harris Jr., I mean, he might be dealt tomorrow for all we know. But Byron Murphy, Greedy Williams, and Rock Ya-Sin, all those guys, I could see the Broncos going with them. Drew Lock, obviously, and then the interior offensive lineman. Cody Ford, interior offensive lineman, but he plays interior for the Broncos. Eric McCoy, and then as well as Dalton Reisner. And then some wide receiver weapons. I mean, heck, the Broncos want to help Joe Flacco, and they want to attack this. I mean, imagine getting like Paris Campbell then to go with Noah Fant. I mean, talk about going from kind of, the Broncos want to add some speed. Whew, there you go. I mean, the DK Metcalf is still there. Deebo Samuel, and N'Keal Harry went off the board there. But I mean, there's some weapons still here. I think personally, I would probably rather wait to 2020 because next year's class at wide receiver looks absolutely incredible. But there's talent here. So, yeah, I think that's we'll see what happens. The Broncos may trade up, but it's going to be fun. They got 3 picks listed for tomorrow. I wouldn't be shocked to see them maybe trade back again and get another 2020 pick. I mean, if the Broncos don't get Locke, I do expect them to go quarterback at some point in this draft, but seems like all hands on deck for 2020. We'll find out tomorrow. But, getting more picks for 2020 and then starting to develop, a plan to get that quarterback. Jordan Love going to be exciting. Jacob Eason, KJ Costello. I won't say Jake Fromm, but I did say him, but I'm not saying Jake Fromm. Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert. So we'll see it, but there's some guys on here, and it's fun to have more picks. I personally would rather have had Devin White, Ed Oliver, Quinnen Williams, but it's exciting to have these players here and have these options, and it makes it, very unpredictable. So, we got to wrap it up here, Carl, but any final thoughts before we get out of here? Well,
I mean, with the Broncos trading back and getting that extra second round pick, it makes tomorrow all the more exciting. And this has been one of those drafts. I've had no clue where teams were going.
Nobody, dude. Don't feel bad. Nobody does.
Yeah. I mean, we were sitting here.
Albright, and really Ben's like, I don't know.
Yeah. We were sitting here trying to make guesses on each pick. And I'm just sitting here going, man, good luck trying to figure this one out. So it's a fun draft. It leaves you scratching your head going, what are these teams seeing that I don't? And this is the make or break. This can make you look like a hero or a zero for sure. And there's many times I do feel like the draft community does better than teams because they get a little bit egotistical. I mean, we've heard about what the Raiders have done, but
with their human element. Yeah. Honestly, I think like meeting these kids and like personalities driving, because we're so detached in that way. Right. I think that kind of mucks it up. Like Caleb McGarry, probably not a first round talent, but if you read about his story, unbelievable. Like if I met him and I was a coach, I probably would have fallen in love too. So I think that maybe changes a little bit. Sorry to cut you off, just that's a thought in my head.
Right. Yeah, that does happen. But no, first round, that was about as exciting of a first round as I've seen in a while. Just in the fact of players that were drafted that you're just sitting there shaking your head laughing at, and others you're just going, man, they just got really good value. And so, I can't wait for tomorrow, man. I will be watching it at a casino, actually.
Oh, man.
Yep, the gambling pastor here. And that's who I am. But no, I'm excited to watch it. My wife was joking because I'm going to be with two of my high school buddies. And she said, so you're going to be on your phone the entire time you're hanging out with your high school buddies, aren't you? I said, yep, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing.
And I love day two even more than day one.
I do too. I definitely do too. So that to me is the make or break, I think, for NFL teams. When you can get those starter quality players to add to your roster and come in, especially even early on, and make a huge impact, that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Nope, you are not wrong. All right, well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Building the Broncos. Carl will not be here tomorrow, but I'll be here with Eric, and we'll be doing it late again, and hopefully have that to you guys Saturday morning. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to Huddle Up Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos podcast. Day one is over, but we still got 2 more days to go. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you tomorrow. Go Broncos, go Noah Fant, go draft.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.